The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world on TV, radio and online. I bid you all good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in all the world's time zones. This is The More Show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'll be joined by Jim Self, who is the author of the book, What Do You Mean the Third Dimension is Going Away? Now, Jim is the co-founder of Mastering Alchemy and an international speaker and author. Jim has been leading seminars and teaching healing, clairvoyance, and personal energy management courses since 1980. Since childhood, Jim has retained a conscious awareness and ability to recall his experiences within the sleep state. Over the last 12 years, this awareness has expanded into relationships with the Archangels, Ascended Masters, and Teachers of the Light. The tools and information presented in Mastering Alchemy programs is a co-creation of these relationships. Jim Self, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Nice to be here with you.
Now, Jim, just tell me a little bit about yourself as well. How did you get into, this sort of spiritual, metaphysical field?
A lot of people are born with it. And in my case, I was kind of a strange kid in numbers of ways because I would do things or see things or help people heal themselves, and yet nobody else did that. And fortunately, in the area where I grew up, it wasn't too weird. But after a period of time, it just seemed to go away. People went away. I didn't go away. And so I just kind of grew up with this awareness of there is more to life than simply doing what most people do every day in their life. And so that process has evolved over time into a tremendous relationship with this consciousness that we all experience, but most of us don't pay attention to. It's subtle, it's very specific, it's very much in present time where you begin to experience and know yourself. And that just has been an evolution with me.
Absolutely. And would you say as well that on some days you just wanted to change the world? And how have you evolved, in a sense, to the place that you're at now, where you're comfortable with your spirituality and getting your message out there at the same time?
I walk with a foot in both worlds. I've built corporations. I've been an assistant to the President of the United States, the Director of Governmental Operations for the Department of Energy. And yet, for 35 years, I've been teaching clairvoyance and healing and energy management. My relationship with, I really don't call it channeling because that's not what it is to me, but my relationship with the Archangels, with many of the spiritual beings in and around who we are in terms of moving this earth and moving humanity into a higher dimensional state of well-being is really my job in this lifetime.
Yeah. And I guess it's pretty much a full-time job for you as well now. And, let's start with alchemy, because a lot of your work's based on that. And just for the audience, what is alchemy?
Oh, that's a great question, and very few people ask that question. See, defined by the Archangels, alchemy is the ability to change the frequency of thought, alter the harmonics of matter, and apply the elements of love to creating a desired result. It really isn't about changing lead to gold. It's much more about changing hate to love, and those distorted third-dimensional words of resistance and reaction, jealousy, rage, changing that into a state of well-being, of graciousness and kindness. And that's simply the shift of alchemy. Now, it takes a little bit of understanding of how to change frequencies and change thought and change emotion. But when you bring it down into a much simpler way of dealing with words, I mean, for example, alchemy, if you were to change the frequency of thought, you know what it feels like to be angry or depressed or resentful. You also know what it feels like to be happy, enthusiastic, and in laughter. And so if I said to you, which thought feels better, the reality is there's no choice. Of course, you're going to feel with like laughter and happy. But if you pay attention, there is an emotion and tied to a thought of rage or anger or resentment. That energy tightens up the body, very clear, everybody understands that. But what happens is it creates an imbalance. When you begin to intentionally change thought and choose emotion, you begin to create a vibration, a reality that allows you to see and experience many things that you can't even begin to grasp when you're in that past, future lifestyle that we live in, worrying about what happened in the past, and I hope it doesn't happen to me again in the future. And words like fear and worry and hope are really very self-debilitating words in many ways because they have you looking for something in a place that doesn't exist.
Right. So, hang on, just 2 seconds. Right. So what you're saying as well is you can't ignore them in a sense. Are you saying that you transform, your issues, your fears in a sense, and that transformation can it be instantaneous if so desirable?
Well, it is instantaneous. How many times have you had a headache in your life and you walk around uncomfortable, but something happens instantaneously, or somebody comes up and says, gee, it's too bad about your headache, but let's go to lunch and have a really nice time, and your response is, oh, yeah, okay, let's do that. Instantly, your headache's gone, or at least your attention to your headache is gone. So you change your state of being all the time, all day long you do this, but for the most part, it's done in a reactionary manner. It's not done in an intentional manner. When you can begin to intentionally recognize, I can choose to put my finger in that light socket again and again and again, or I can simply choose not to. Once you realize that you can begin to choose consciously, now it sounds funny because everybody says, oh, I do that all the time. Well, actually, no, you don't. See, in order to be able to choose, you have to be in present time right now. And in that course of choosing, I can do this or I can do that. Now, we pass in and out of present time often. But for the most part, when you think about how people live their lives, they live in the past and in the future. And you can't create anything in the past and the future. Once you begin to get into present time, you begin to have choice. You also have an interesting word that comes to play, and that word is paradox, meaning what was true just a minute ago may not be true right now, and what was false may not be false. So consequently, in your ability to live your life differently, understanding choice in present time, it's virtually like walking around with your head down in that third dimensional fear state of being we all grow up in, and all of a sudden having permission to look up. And when you look up into this shifting consciousness, you begin to have a lot more choices than you can even imagine.
Yeah. And, if there's some spiritual people I've met, because spirituality means something different for everyone, and that's fine as well, who
Right.
have patterns, for example. They know they've got these issues, they're trying to heal their issues, yet they can't, they don't seem to want to switch their tapes off sometimes and make those
Exactly.
changes. They seem to want to not
They
ignore
want to
them.
change the world. They
Yeah.
want the world to move to them. And, good luck with that. If you really want to change the world, change yourself, and the entirety of the world will rotate around you. But many people are very spiritual in words, but they are not spiritual in actions that allow the shifting of consciousness to come about within them. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? I mean, sometimes it could be it's a life challenge. It's maybe what the souls come here to do, to heal these issues, and also I'm sure there's other lessons that go on in soul groups as well.
That's very correct. And so, but to step back a little bit and frame it somewhat differently, this is a shift in consciousness. This shift has never occurred since the fall of consciousness. And in my reality, putting a time, I don't put time on anything, but the Archangels refer to the fall of consciousness as now taking over 1 billion years of unfolding that fall of consciousness. And that story is just absolutely exceptional. It's a wonderful story because it wasn't really about a bad angel or wars, or it didn't happen that way. It was simply a distortion in realities that just mutated and took off and became part of everything. And we lost a lot of our consciousness in that.
Yeah.
But right now, shift is changing.
And, and I suppose you could say our connection to our true self as well has been lost, and the sort of connection to the spiritual realms, in a sense, who would want communication with us to live from a different space as well, a more joyous space.
That is the fall of consciousness. We lost our connection to ourselves. We lost that oneness with Creator. When I get to play, particularly in the sleep state, it's just a different, complete reality than it has been as we understand life. But basically, you're fully connected. You think apple, and the apple appears in your hand, and you're in happiness and joyful appreciation, gratitude, dignity. Those are the vibrations of oneness and of that consciousness. Yeah. But once you start to connect with it, it's just really astonishing.
Oh, it's incredible, and then you don't mind speaking your truth neither. You don't care what people think, but you're not there to preach in a sense.
No, you see, that's part of it. Managing your energy field, knowing when to engage, and knowing when not to engage is really a very large experience for many people to learn.
Yeah, because, some souls, no matter how much you try to help them, they're there for a purpose. Their journey is there for a purpose. You can't judge neither. And that preachy side just sort of, it's a balance, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a big balance. And learning when to reach out and uplift and provide opportunity to somebody and when not to provide that is a real dance. That statement in the Bible, don't cast your pearls before swine. How many times have we all simply helped somebody who wasn't asking for help, even though their words were, and yet they couldn't have what you gave them? So if you can begin to get into present time, and that's what Mastering Alchemy is all about, is teaching tools to manage your energy and your awareness. But if somebody can't have it, don't give it to them, because they're going to turn around and bite your hand. But watch them, and there'll be an opportunity where there's an ability to give them something, and then walk away and need nothing in return.
Yes.
And that's really the gift.
Yes, absolutely. And just very quickly, while we're on the subject of alchemy, would you say what you've summed up there is the way to master alchemy in a sense? Well,
Mastering Alchemy is about really learning how to manage your energy field and your thoughts and your emotions. As simple as I can put it. And people go, I do that all the time. No, you don't. People are in that third dimensional reality. We are constantly in reaction. And that reaction is I don't want what happened to me to happen to me again. Or they told me if I would do X, then I would be successful, happy, married, have all the 2 kids, and all the things that are success. But how many people in success are really happy? And so that aspect of beginning to learn how to manage your energy field, choose your thoughts, recognize something so fundamentally simple as the law of attraction is flawless. What you put your attention on is what I, the universe who adores you, the universe says, will provide for you. The challenge is that we walk around being not okay. Each one of us grows up in life having somebody give us a series of gifts that says you're not smart, you're not attractive, you don't fit, you're never going to succeed, what's wrong with you? And we simply accept that, integrate it into the body, don't like it at all, and then walk around going, what did I do wrong? The reality is, in the mechanics of energy, you did nothing wrong. You just simply accepted a vibration that was not yours as your truth. And once you do that, it's like putting on a pair of shoes that's too small and walking your path.
Oh, the way that you say that is just really amazing, actually. Yeah, and there's a lot of truth in what you've just said. And I mean, maybe souls come in contact with each other in that situation to have that experience, so that they truly do go back into themselves, to believe back in themselves, and to find that path, because all paths in the end lead to truth.
Exactly, and it's your truth. There is really no the truth. See, you're a creator being. You were created to create, and part of that process of creation is doing something and then simply stepping back and say, how did that work? And many times it doesn't work. It's not a failure. It's simply part of your own personal evolution. But as far as what you just spoke to, as far as other souls and other beings, we came here in it's an odd thing. The person that you hate in life, to an extent, is absolutely your best friend as a spiritual being.
Yes.
It's as if you said, gee, I'm going to go down there and have this experience, and I'm going to build in punching somebody in the nose. And your best friend says, I've never been punched in the nose. It's like, wow, let's go play this game together. But when you get down here, see, a lot of times people forget why they came. The creator said, I have a game to play and I'd like volunteers. And it was you who ran to the front of the line and said, send me. And the creator said, wait a minute, let me explain. See, you're going to put a bag over your head and you're going to go down there and it's going to be dark and you're going to forget me and you're going to forget who you are and you're going to bounce around and you're going to try to find your way back. And you said, great, send me. How far into that darkness should I go? And the creator smiled and said, knock yourself out. And you said, watch this. And here we are. And we are unwinding from that space right now in the most amazing ways, because this is the shift of consciousness that we're in. And it's not going to be long before everybody on this planet remembers who they are.
Well, that was very powerful stuff there. That's right. But we, no matter how many of us have remembered our connection with Source, myself, you, and everyone else that we know who is in this same field, the results don't matter. It's not like we're a religious organization setting up in some poverty-stricken area, for example, to take, to capture people. The results don't matter. Even if it was even if there was no waking up of people of an alternative truth, in a sense, not the truth, what would it matter?
Well, what is happening is, most everybody's had this experience. I relate it to being out in the woods at 4 o'clock in the morning, sleeping or being awake for whatever reason as a kid. And I can remember something happening. Something is like a switch turned. And I looked around, and at that moment, that feeling like something just happened, it's really the beginning of the day from the night. And that day just continues to evolve. And if you're outside in the darkness and you close your eyes for 30 seconds, open your eyes, there's more light. But yet, if you tried to keep your eyes open and see that evolution of light in that 30 seconds, you don't notice the changes. But right now, we're at a place where the sun has kind of come over the mountaintop. You're beginning to see light in a very different way than has ever occurred before. And the Archangels, Yeshua, Metatron, Michael, in all of our conversations, because that's who I hang out with. I got the most greatest job in the world. And people go, oh, sure. It doesn't matter what other people say. This is my reality. And in that process of understanding this evolution of consciousness, the shifting nature of the Earth. See, the Earth is about to change into a star. Now, that's kind of bizarre for people to hear, so it's not a prediction. It's just a statement that the consciousness of who we are has fallen so far, and we are in the process of re-evolving ourselves, and it's happening at a remarkable rate. You're going to watch over the next number of years people put their guns down because it just doesn't make sense. You're going to find people stop yelling at one another because it's just not the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is driven by this internal guidance system in the heart, not by some government or some banking system that says you must do these things. People are consciously waking up right now. You see it all over the world. You see these changes occurring where people wish to have their freedom. The challenge is you've been given your freedom in real terms right now. The good news is you have your freedom. The bad news is you have your freedom. What do I do with this? And people don't know how to manage themselves because we've been so conditioned into the system that we have grown up in, that this is what you do and this is what life is and this is how you live. And people are saying, no, this is not what we want any longer. And you're going to watch it in these next 5 years, which are going to be very challenging because in a transition from one thing to another, there is a chaos, there is a challenge, and you're about to see, you are seeing it, these challenges where the old system has to go away. So you're going to see major cracks in the institutional structures that we live our life. Just look around, you're seeing it in all kinds of manners. And for you all in England particularly, how's your weather lately? You know, the changes are really in motion. But over the next 5 years, it's going to be challenging. But through that same 5 years, it's going to be very enlightening and very exciting.
Okay, Jim, well, we're going to take a quick break there, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio show.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm joined by author Jim Self, author of his latest book, What Do You Mean the Third Dimension is Going Away? Jim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to be here.
Now, Jim, this is a really fascinating interview on some of the things that you've channeled and the information that you've sought after all the years of being in this field. I guess, just very briefly before we get more into the book, do you think that spirituality and religion will eventually sort of come together? That they're both saying their own truths, but in different ways, in a sense.
Well, they're both saying their own truths. What you're going to find is this nature that's driven by this internal guidance system in the heart is really what drives the majority of people, everybody on the planet. Some have turned away from it because they've been told this is true and this is true. And that's where the religions have kind of, over many years, dealt with themselves from a position of power and control and domination. Direction that they've given, but has been very much outside of the teachings of the Quran or the Bible or many of the other great books that have been provided for us as guidance. So you're going to see religions crumble, but you're going to see faith and spirituality flourish in the most amazing ways. Because, see, I can only interact with you from the standpoint of that nature of who you are. When I'm pushing against you or in jealousy or in anger or resentment, that's simply the pain of being disconnected from that internal guidance system that we all know very intimately. What happens is the external world said, here is the truth. Live this way. This is who you are. Again, and then we're given those messages. You're not smart. You're not attractive. You don't fit. You're never going to succeed. And it's your job to go and make yourself a better person. No, you started out a better person. You didn't. There's nothing wrong with you. You cannot be not okay. It is impossible to be not okay. But you can accept somebody else's non-truth opinion, bad lifetime one moment when they said, what's wrong with you? How come you aren't being smart today? And then that energy is so potent, especially when it comes from, mom, dad, teacher, minister in life. And then we walk around holding this going, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
The only thing that's wrong is you're holding on to something that's not your truth.
Well, do you think some of these truths, some of these issues that we have, that we can't explain in some sense, do you think some of them are connected to past lives as well that haven't been dealt with?
Yeah, but that's too noisy for me generally. It's too much to try to figure out what did I do 14 lifetimes ago when I was the king and I beheaded somebody. That's just too noisy, and it's too distracting. The reality is, and this is so one of the really wonderful parts about this shift of consciousness, is a lot of that noise, I'm not okay, I don't deserve. The reality is, when you were a freshman in high school and you were telling a joke and you thought it was really funny, and then everybody looked at you and they thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And all of a sudden, where you were engaged in a positive, funny way, you just got embarrassed. In that one moment, your whole life takes a different path. That's all it takes to change your joy into your not okayness.
Okay, but what about people who rape and murder? I mean, have they agreed to this on a soul level that this will take place? Is with free will to be able to do it or not? I suppose, or is there something deeper with they've just lost their connection of who they truly were?
Both of those things are engaged. So we come here to walk a path. Now, when you're happy and joyful, you're looking right at the light of your own inner guidance. When you're depressed, angry, resentful, you've turned away from that. I mean, it's really that simple in my reality of watching, millions of people play in this space. But what happens is raping somebody or murdering somebody is not necessarily on the agenda. The agenda is part of your life path, is to work through issues, work through your ability to recognize that you're a brilliant, capable being of well-beingness in state of vitality versus holding on to I'm not okay. What I watch happen from the psychology side of everything in reality is people get themselves depressed and then they act out of the depression or they act out of the message that was given to them by somebody else. I'm not okay.
Right.
And so you get so resentful about not okay, you lash out, and there's consequences to lashing out.
I see. Okay. and again, I'll just mention this very briefly, but, if we were maintaining that being in the moment, not worrying about what's going to happen in the future with all that noise, not worrying about what has been or you've done wrong, just being centered in this moment, that everything in this moment is perfect, that would help as well.
Well, it would help. And what happens is, I'm totally in agreement with you, but for the most part, it's a lie. Now, what I mean by that is my life has never been anything like that. And every time I've tried to be happy, I have fallen back into some path that isn't happy, people will say to you. What is the issue here is, are you living in your external environment and situations and the statements that we treat as truth in those external realities, or are you able to simply go inside and recognize that when I walk along the creek in the springtime and listen to the birds and the snow's all melting and it's a nice warm day, I feel good. I like this. How many times have you been in that place, for example, in nature, where you just said, this is it? Or you see something of great beauty and your response is, God, wow, you did a job on this. See, that's who you are. Now, the challenge is, and this is why Mastering Alchemy, where I get to play, we teach tools. We don't teach philosophy or the right or wrong. Simply, what happens if you do this? What happens if you change your thought the thought, I say to people occasionally, have you ever been certain? And so people say, oh, yeah, I've been certain. No, not this. Have you ever been certain? And so sit back, close your eyes, take a breath, and feel certain. And what happens is the body simply moves into an alignment. And there's a feeling. If you can begin to become conscious of the thought and the emotion, you start to align yourself with this inner guidance system. It's really ridiculously simple, but
when you
simple is
mention
not easy.
No, absolutely. But when you mention the emotional part there, should everything we go through be emotionally processed in a sense? How do I feel about this? Does this feel right? How has this made me feel?
No.
Because
No,
some
in fact,
people,
that's too mental.
but some people would say that that's the right way. That it's all a feeling process. So if I'm over hyper, this is just because this is the way that I'm choosing to find the answers in life. In a sense, this is my understanding of my awakened path.
Sure. Well, it's actually much simpler than that, and it's much more complicated than that. Therapy, as we know, therapy really only started in the 70s. I mean, there was James and Freud and those guys, but therapy in terms of dealing with feelings was something that only started in the 1970s. So you go to the therapist, and the therapist sits and talks to you about well, why are you having these problems? Well, heck, I didn't like the problem when it happened the first time. I'm really not excited about going and revisiting my feeling about it the second time. That's what the rational mind says. The rational mind is not your mind. It's a function of the mind. Then the rational mind's job is to keep you safe and have you fit in. That's its job. And so what happens when you start to begin to approach aspects of your external truth that is not in alignment with you, and it's not in alignment with you, but that's what I'm supposed to do, you begin to have this set of thoughts that says, oh no, what are you doing? They're going to get mad at you again. And so that process of beginning to figure out how to move through the mental and the emotional process from a third dimensional psychological manner does work for some people because they step into their spiritual space. But it doesn't work for most of us, has been my experience over the last 40 years of therapy, watching it and playing in it. But when you can create a different platform to view yourself, not X or Y, but simply a different platform, and if you can begin to hold thoughts and emotions like happy and certain, capable, very present, graciousness, commanding of that presence, when you can begin to align the thought and the emotion, you all of a sudden have a presence about you that is very different. And when you can begin to anchor that presence, you can begin to perceive your external world from your internal guidance system in a manner that I guarantee you has been very elusive to 99% of us.
No, absolutely. And well, let's move away from third dimension in a sense, and let's head towards fourth dimension. How is your work? In a sense, the fourth dimension, understanding the fourth dimension, let's look at that to begin with, because I'm still not too sure what that is.
Well, here, let me step back and define third dimension a simple way, and I can define fourth. So third dimension is a very rigid structure. It deals in reaction. It is conditional. There is nothing unconditional in the third dimension at all. Now, people are going to say, well, wait a minute, I do this, I do that. Yes, you do, but it's fourth dimension. So you're living in a third and a fourth dimension box at the same thing. One of the key triggers in third dimensional reality is time. Time is thought in third dimension. Well, it's past, present, future, and then you die. That's just how it is. But in real terms, time is an application. It's not a fixed constant. And so when you live in the past and the future, worrying about, hoping for, you cannot create anything. So when you step into the fourth dimension, which is a time structure in present time, right now, right here where we are having this communication, we're not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. In fourth dimension, to keep it very simple, once you get into present time, you have choice. See, in reaction, you don't have choice. And in reaction, you really don't get into present time, except for that 1 minute where you go, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to happen. And all that is the law of attraction. You keep worrying about, I hope it doesn't happen, I hope it doesn't happen. And the universe says, well, gee, Kevin woke up again this morning hoping it's not going to happen. Well, let's give him what he's asking for, which is that attention point on an emotional and mental level. When you step into fourth dimension, present time, and there is choice. So I can see the train coming, and I can see I'm standing on the tracks, and I can stand here and go, oh my God, in third dimension, or I can take a breath and step off and enjoy the breeze. So fourth dimension is really a stepping stone into the fifth dimension, which is also very much present time. But in the fifth dimension, in simple terms, which is where you're really going, is you experience yourself in well-being and beauty and graciousness, kindness, dignity. There's respect, and these are the vibrations that you live in. From that standpoint, you begin to change your reality. I mean, this whole issue of how is it that 90% or more of the brain is turned off, and yet when scientists begin to play in it, something's going on in all those centers. What happens is you can't access those vibrational frequencies because there's no stepping stone to get to that level. When you begin to play in fifth dimension, you have access to beginning to change the physiology of the body in the most amazing ways there is. It's just an amazing process.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could say that there's multi-dimensions in a sense beyond our comprehension. You know, it's the Christ figure, for example. Perhaps he came from a dimension that was spiritually evolved in a sense.
Well, you're correct. Yes and no. Yes, but you're correct. See, there is an aspect of you that is, let me just move this phone so it doesn't ring it. There's many, you have a number of bodies. You have this mental and emotional body, but you also have an etheric body. You have what's referred to as a causal body, a Christed body. Every one of these bodies are bigger, vaster levels of your own consciousness that you have access to. But you can't do it in past and future. And so that's the beginning bridging point that we're all playing with right here, is to be able to create a situation where you can step out of that third dimensional reality, hence this shift of consciousness, begin to step into a place where there's ease and freedom. And in the fifth dimension, for example, the words safety or trust really aren't even words, because there is nothing unsafe and there's nothing to distrust. It's from that place you begin to access realms of consciousness. Now, we could call them dimensions, we could call them realms, but they are vast levels of awareness. You know, let me put it in this perspective. In a conversation with Metatron one time, he said, the smallest grain of sand is like your universe and all that is. It's a massive experience, or the single drop of water is to what the grandest oceans that you can imagine are, and that's consciousness in an evolved manner.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless, aren't they? Okay, well, look, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined by my guest, Jim Self. Now, Jim, I have read parts of your book, and it is really interesting, and I would recommend anyone to please take a read of this book. Moving forward a little bit, obviously, thought and the law of attraction. This plays heavy in one of your chapters.
Yes.
Can we have the life we want?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But what happens is you can't have that life that you want living in the external truths or perceived truths of others. How many of us grow up in a family and the family says, well, this is the truth. You go to this school, you don't go to that school. You play with these kids, you don't play with those kids. You eat these kind of foods, you don't eat those kind of foods. So the conditionality of our lives have been structured virtually from day one. Now, in that conditionality, the mom, dad, teacher, minister of all of us love us. Let's just give them all the benefit of the doubt for the moment. They love us. They want well-being for us. But what happens is, on an energetic level, a lot of times the energy of other people wind up being put into our space. How many times have you walked into a room, keeping it simple, and all of a sudden feeling the room is really off balance, or there's a lot of frustration in this room. People are angry in this room. I don't think I really want to be here. The body tells you that. It's not your mind. It's like, this isn't okay. How many times in your life have you wanted to do something because it felt right, and yet, my mom would be really upset with me if I did that, or the minister told me, or that external world is so conditioning. I saw a little kid one time reach out and grab an apple in the grocery store. And the kid had this just the biggest smile, and he grabbed this red apple. And the mother reached over and grabbed the apple and looked her right in the eye and said, "Shame on you." Oh, my God. That is so devastating. Do you think that kid's ever going to grab an apple again? What happens is when we, as living consciousness in the form of physical form, don't have an ability to understand our actions and our thoughts and our emotions, and we throw energy, we wind up creating conditionality in other people's spaces. And so growing up, that structure, we all do it. We do it constantly. We disapprove of something. We look at somebody and go, "Well, that was stupid." That energy winds up in their space, and then they don't do that again. That's the conditionality of the third dimension. So can everybody be happy? Yes, but it takes some work here. It's really ridiculously simple, but it's not easy. And so that's the reason why in the book we talk about this a lot. In all of our classes we talk about it exclusively, is how do you build that platform to where you begin to find safe permission. If you're not safe, you have no permission to experience yourself. So if you can create that space where you feel safe and you have permission, and then you start to live in certain and capable and appreciation, and you give yourself permission to experience yourself, something really shifts, because now you're again aligning with that guidance system in the heart.
Yeah. I mean, do you think self-love has a role to play in that as well?
Oh, of course. But see, self-love in a lot of ways is conditioned to how I'm allowed to love myself. If I can't hang out with these kids and I can't go to that school and I can only eat this food, and somebody says to me, who you really like, let's go to lunch, we're going to go have pizza, and, well, I'm not allowed to have pizza. I'm being really simple in my examples purposely, but all of a sudden I can't do that. Well, but just a minute ago you were in total joy with that other person that you were with, until the external conditionality creeped into your permission to know yourself. That's where the challenge of self-love comes. Once you can begin to recognize this is who I am, and trust this guidance system, because we all know this guidance system. You know, how many times have you, as a kid, hung out with others and they said, let's go do this, and you went, I don't think so. and they went and did it, or you went and did it and it didn't work out? Or how many times did you say, this is true, and somebody said, no, it's not. What's wrong with you? And you didn't follow your truth, and you still to this day go, I should have done that. See, that's the guidance system.
Yeah, that is the guidance system, and so be careful of your thoughts as well. Just to sum up the other points that we've made.
Well, not even be careful. Choose your thoughts, because that aspect of be careful creates a level of fear that says
sure,
some
right.
things around it. See, that's as simple as words are. We choose them out of our habits, and we speak them often, and we just do it out of habit. That's the place where we begin to catch ourselves and then shift the thoughts. But that can only be done in present time.
Okay. So it's kind of like rewiring ourselves in a sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's what this is all about, rewiring. And so let me take one more little piece of this. One of the great parts of this shift is that moment I spoke about a little while ago where I thought I was telling a joke and everybody laughed at me, not with me, and I was embarrassed. The reality is that was a moment in time that really had very little to do with you at all. But we hold on to it. As this shift of consciousness is occurring, and as you start to get into present time, and as you start to look for this internal guidance system, the universe, which adores you, understands that embarrassment has now been hidden into your unconscious at such a deep level you don't even remember the event. But yet, law of attraction says what you hold your attention on is what I will provide for you. See, the law of attraction doesn't understand English and Spanish and French and German. What the law of attraction understands is your attention point, how you hold your thoughts and your emotions. And so if you walk around saying as a mantra, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, I'm not okay, the universe just simply says, whoa, Jim woke up again this morning not being okay. He must love this game. Let's give him another version of not okay. Because that's how the law of attraction works. It's not trying to embarrass you or humiliate you. It gives you what you put your attention on. So as you begin to play this game out and you get into happy and present time, the universe knows that moment of embarrassment really has nothing to do with you. And so it's being cleaned from the shelf, if you could. A lot of your memories are disappearing. You are losing your memory. It's not that you have Alzheimer's or dementia. You are simply beginning to lose references to I'm not okay that were never yours in the first place. It's really quite amazing how the game's unfolding. So you're forgetting who you are not, and you are beginning to have more and more access to this internal guidance system. That is exactly how, over the next 10, 15 years, the world is going to shift in the most amazing ways. It's not going to be enjoyable for most over those coming years, but you're going to wake up one day and go, what were we thinking in those early 2000s, in the 1990s? How could we have done those things?
Yeah.
And that will be a common thought.
Yeah. And I guess that, changing the way you're being conscious of everything and looking at things from a different perspective as well, can only build a healthier relationship to you, a healthier relationship to the people that enter in your life, and an understanding that when you are in a room of energy that's different, you learn to recognize it and yet still retain yourself in that sense.
Absolutely. And it's not only retain yourself, when you begin to hold well-being and graciousness, appreciation, you begin to emanate a level of light that is contagious. Yeah. Now, you've been around people like that. You yourself can do that with people all the time. You walk into a room and people go, it's Kevin, hey, nice to see you. It's contagious when you love yourself. And love is an interesting word because it has the gazillion variations of appreciation and well-being, a smile, a little child laughing. That's all love.
Yeah. And I suppose then spiritually, in one sense, there is no wrong or right.
Correct. But there is an appropriateness. See, again, you go back to that internal guidance system and you do something. How many times do you say, I don't think so? Or you have that feeling, yes, there's no right or wrong, but there is a sense of appropriateness, correctness. If I could take my magic wand and tap everybody on the head and say, actually, it's a great story, and I forgot how I was going to take that. the moment. I'll come back to that one.
Well, no, actually, it's funny. I really wanted to say this as well, that, whenever you approach a situation in the sense of wrong and right, what would love do next? Where would love come from in the situation I'm about to do, on the deed I'm about to do?
Right. See, when you ask that question, you have to go into that sense of personal alignment. And when you get to that sense of personal alignment, you know your own truth. So where I was going to go with that, if I tapped you on the head and we said there is no right or wrong, and there is no good or bad, and there is no should or shouldn't. We're simply going to remove those concepts from your reality. Then the next thing I said to you is, I want you to go and murder that person over there. Would you do that? Well, the response usually is, well, no. Well, wait, there's no right or wrong, no good or bad, no should or shouldn't. Why not? Because it doesn't feel right. It's not who I am is the answer. It's not appropriate.
No.
And see, when you get to that place, you begin to find that inner guidance. And that's where that aspect of loving yourself begins to be quite powerful.
Yeah. And I suppose you also sort of develop more, in a sense, empathy and compassion as well.
Oh, compassion is such a wonderful world. But then it gets to be another component of that, is going back to the very first part of this discussion, is compassion is, see, you can be sympathetic with somebody and you're over there fixing them, or even empathetic over there and fixing them. But how many times did they ask you to fix them? And that's where that aspect of somebody biting your hand comes back into play. But compassion is the place of knowing the difference, giving somebody a helping hand that is very much in their best interest from their point of view versus helping somebody who's not asking. Compassion is that place of understanding and knowing the difference. And that takes a little bit of work. I'm constantly still working on that, when to assist and when not to assist.
And are you constantly working on your issues as well, in a sense?
Issues for me have somewhat disappeared from my reality. Do I still have a pimple on my nose that I want to fix and be more kind and gracious around? Yeah, of course. Do I have it all together? No. But am I the person I was way back when? Honestly, I don't remember who that person was anymore.
No. And it's I suppose it's that, I always say this saying, a leopard can't change its spots, but it can transform I was going to say a leopard can't change its spots, but it can grow new ones, even though I know that's not true. But that's how I see transformation sometimes.
But it very much is that. You still have, for example, you're compassionate with understanding versus just, being the savior of everybody on the street. The challenge is in that aspect of third dimension, there's many stratas of consciousness that we are all walking through. They're like rooms that we get to play in to get a better glimpse of ourselves. They're not right or they're not wrong, and many people are playing in the room at the same time. And there's many wonderfully compassionate people that are feeding people on soup lines all over the world. And that's their job. That's their single lesson in life that they're working on. And in some ways, this will sound odd, their success in their lesson is knowing when they've succeeded and then taking their apron off and walking away from the soup line so they can go and have more experience in their life. Somebody else will pick up their apron. But knowing when you are complete and when you have succeeded at your adventure is part of the whole process. How many times have you stayed too long in the process?
Yeah.
And you missed another opportunity, or you started feeling like, I don't like this anymore, and even then you begin to get resentful.
Well, okay. Well, we've almost finished here now, and I hate to say that because we could have got through a lot more. But what would you think is the most important message in your work right now?
Well, it really is to know yourself. Now, that's a huge statement in simple terms, but basically begin to find yourself in present time and start to notice your choices. Notice your thoughts, notice your feelings, notice your habits. See, we create these habits beliefs that turn into habits, and then they just get put into unconscious and they operate on rote automatic. Begin to notice what you do that you don't like and become conscious of it and choose a different choice in present time.
Well, Jim Self, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio show.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.